All right. So, in our conversation today, I just wanted to kind of bring something forward for a talking point. We spoke a little bit yesterday about starting small. And so I found personally that, starting this whole wellness journey, I'll call it, kind of coming back from rehab and into life, and recognizing and learning about things that I had never really paid attention to before. Health, what I was eating, all this stuff. I felt like I was getting just a barrage of information, and seemed like everything I was doing was wrong or unhealthy or toxic. So there's just so much and on so many levels. And, there's bad information out there, there's a vast array of information out there. And, um, I just kind of want to talk about some pointers for just staying focused and like how to really start out and what to start with and all of that stuff. How do we figure that out?
Well, as we mentioned yesterday, you start out the same way that you progress, which is slowly. In this case, with the vast array you're talking about of information, good, bad, whatever, I think the best thing is to choose one area. You know, it's best to focus on one, maybe two at a time, but I would recommend one, especially when you're starting out, and really just focus on that. And when I say one thing, I'm not meaning go and say, I'm going to clean up my whole diet. That's a big take. That's a big ask of yourself,
Hmm.
right? In one leap. That's a large leap, we're gonna call that. We don't do large leaps here, we do small steps.
Mm.
Small steps. So a small step within that large leap. So you don't gotta do the leap. A step would be I'm gonna make myself eat consistently 3 meals a day. Once you're able to do that consistently, then you start worrying about what's in those meals. That would be an example of small steps.
Hmm.
Because like you, of course, I started out somewhere too. Mine was over a decade ago, but whether it be then or now, still, anytime that I forget to take just small steps and I try to do a large leap, at some point, and it may not be right away, but at some point I end up falling back to where I was because
Mm.
it's just hard to maintain that level of change on
Hmm.
several levels.
Yeah.
Because first there's just the initial act of making the change, then you've got the energy of keeping the change, and on top of, or underneath rather, all of that is the fact that your body, your whole systems are not used to that being part of your routine, and now you're not just messing with some small part of the routine, you're messing with the whole thing.
Hmm.
And whether or not they're healthy or not, we're all set up once, especially once you're an adult, in some kind of routine. Your body is used to something
Yeah.
every day, a certain pattern, a certain behaviors in certain orders,
Hmm.
you know? So you reprogram that, recondition that slowly rather than trying to shock it all.
So some of the things that I kind of integrated to my daily routine would be like breath work. Talked about that before, and meditation, visualization, getting outside. But a big one for me, kind of a daily one, and I find myself doing it, especially the more we work together. I find myself doing it in a more and more effective capacity, just note taking and journaling in general. And so I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about that as well.
So as far as note taking goes, I just in general find note taking helpful because no matter how good your memory is, there's going to be things you forget over time. So it's always good to have a reference point. And nowadays, it's all the more useful because you can enter those into a digital source and actually make them searchable so that you can find them again. Um, but the deeper of the two being journaling, which can take on many forms, I think.
Hmm.
There's what I think we often think of just, keeping a diary or something every day, which is helpful for unloading cognitive load, and also helps somewhat in dealing with life, the things that happen, good, bad, whatever. But in the health and fitness realms, there's also keeping a food log,
Mhm.
so you can start getting a more realistic view of what you're eating. And right along with that is your water intake or just general beverage intake. And then if you're physically active, you can track your activity. Right along with that, you can also track your just general energy levels, how you're feeling throughout the day. Also, your sleep. When do you go down? When do you wake up? You know, um, I would say, again, small steps. So we want to do one at a time.
Mhm.
You want to take one of those examples, let's say for now, a food log, and you start keeping track of what you're eating. You know, I mean, it's great if you can get a journal, a diary or whatever, maybe
Mhm.
design one yourself. Someday perhaps we'll have one for people that contains all of these things. That makes it a lot easier. You can then just undertake all of them. But if you don't have some kind of pre-made form, it's easy enough to just do one of these things in a lined notebook.
Mhm.
Once you figure out how to do that and you make it part of your day, you can add another one to it. And all of these things together will give you a much better idea, probably, of why things are the way they are in
Mhm.
your life.
And I mean, that's really the goal here, right? Is to kind of bring awareness and the ability to analyze ourselves into the situation, more so than make a huge change at one time, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And by writing everything down, whether it be note taking or tracking things through journals, all of that helps in later on going back and analyzing things, finding things that work for you, what doesn't work for you. Maybe something worked for you better when you did it at a different time of the day. As far as sleep, maybe different sleep duration is better for you. Certain time of going down and waking up, if you have the flexibility to work around with that a little.
Mhm.
These are all things that become all the easier to do when they're written down rather than just in your head.
Definitely. And I mean, I'll admit for me, it's one of those things where even if I don't see the effect every day, kind of like you said earlier, it's when I look back and I realize, oh wow, that was actually super effective. It's helping me a lot in the long run. And yet I wasn't giving myself enough time to do that. I wasn't giving myself enough time to recognize the benefit of it.
Definitely, definitely, and no matter how useful something is or how successful we are at implementing our things, I think everybody falls off from time to time too. So don't get too down on yourself in that.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up too, because that has always been a really huge struggle of mine is just consistency, getting to a certain point and then just feeling overwhelmed and falling off rather than pulling back, to kind of like a computer, pulling back to a reset point, and then
Mm-hmm.
going back forward. Now you know what went wrong and you can avoid it this time. And so, I found that I don't have to burn everything down now. I don't have to run away, when things get too tough and overwhelming. I'm starting to be able to kind of identify and share some of those deeper feelings, I guess. And I think that comes from a lot of this, from the expression of myself, even if it's just in note taking and journaling or learning about the body and myself in different ways. So yeah, any other thoughts or tips or exercises on that note? Before I
No,
drop
not
our social media plugs.
not really. I would just encourage everybody to, try and track something for 1 week. See how it sits with you, see how it impacts you, see how it can change, hopefully see how it can change at least your understanding of self.
And Logan, I hope you have a wonderful day. thank you for the conversation. As always, it has been insightful, and
Happy to
hope,
do it, man. Always a pleasure.